I want to talk about something that keeps coming up with women like me who are in midlife. It's this idea that midlife is somehow a crisis. Because honestly, I don't buy it. I hear women say things like, I feel off, I don't know who I am anymore, I've gained weight in menopause, and I have no idea how to get my health back. And oftentimes the assumption is, even like, in popular culture, but also in what we think, what goes on in our own brains, is that somehow we are having a crisis. But when we actually think about it, that explanation is just not true, and it just doesn't wash. It might feel like a crisis, but I'm here to tell you that's actually not what's happening. So most of the women I talk about, they are not falling apart. They do know what they're doing. They've raised families over decades. They've run homes like a $1 million organization. They've had careers. They've raised children. They've done all of the above all at once. They are not fragile. And Gen X women are definitely not fragile. So when I hear a woman say this, a capable, not fragile woman in midlife, when I hear her say something like this, or I hear this being something that women in midlife are experiencing, what I hear is that something has shifted, things are different, my life experience is different right now, there's a void or a space in front of me. And that's a very different thing. So the word crisis implies that something is wrong or something is breaking down or that there's something bad happening. And that's simply not what is happening. What is happening is we are going through a transition. We are going through a reinvention. Now, this might seem very simple to you. Maybe you're like, duh, but here's the deal. This is not the narrative that's going on. This is not the way that a lot of women are thinking about this period in their lives. A lot of women have spent decades being needed in a certain way, being the doer of all things, being the organizer, being the person that holds it all together. I like to say, like, carrying the emotional weight. And then slowly or suddenly for some people, that demand changes, that scenario changes. Kids grow up, they go through teenagerhood, young adulthood, they start leaving, they go away to school. We call this empty nesting. Life in some ways gets quieter. Maybe some women at this age are definitely facing retirement. Maybe you're an entrepreneur like I am, and you're kind of like, wow, things can be a little bit different for me now because I'm not trying to run my business as a stay-at-home mom and trying to do both things, one or the other. So what's crazy is that nobody prepares us for this. We are not prepared for this phase, right? Nobody tells us that how bittersweet it is when you watch one of your kids walk away to go build a life or go away to school. Nobody tells you how heartbreaking that is in one breath, and then on the other hand, how incredibly proud you are as a parent. Nobody prepares us for the void. Nobody prepares us for changes in our relationships that happen. Nobody prepares many of us who have increased anxiety and who all of a sudden have this feeling of like, I do not give a poop anymore. And not only do I not give a poop, but I don't really care that I don't give a poop. And so the question becomes, who am I when I am not serving everyone else? Bam. So this is where I use the word commissioning, not in like a preachy religious way, although you do know that on here I am faith-based. I fully believe that God has a plan for midlife women, that we go through this messy middle for a reason. So a commissioning is where you're being called to a different level of responsibility. You're actually being called to leadership. So less managing, more leading. And leading yourself looks very different than managing and holding everybody else together, partly because you're no longer operating on autopilot, which is often how most women describe that phase of getting married, having children, raising children, managing homes. It honestly does feel like you were on autopilot for decades. Here's the thing that most midlife women don't hear enough. When an identity has been built around other people, serving other people, supporting other people, being the emotional safety net for other people, that quiet that we're now experiencing, it can feel almost a little bit threatening. Not because it's bad, but because this quiet that we're now experiencing, it's forcing us to reflect. It's forcing us to think about things that we've done or haven't done, or things that we want to do, and are we capable of doing them? It's forcing us to, some of us, to question our relationships and asking the questions like, what do I actually want to do in this season? What am I no longer going to tolerate? What needs to change for real? What needs to change? Maybe not dramatically, but structurally. So those sorts of questions are what we call leadership questions. They're not questions like I am in crisis questions. So this is where habits come in. And I call these CEO level habits because they are habits that we, for some of us, will be forced to develop in midlife. They're habits based on self-authority, on things that we are choosing. And that looks very, very different than habits that we might have been engaged in our 20s and 30s. So, and also be aware that CEO habits are not like trying to fix it habits. They're not habits out of motivation. They're not quick fix kind of habits. And they're definitely not self-improvement habits. When a woman moves from supporting and handling to leading, she no longer relies on adrenaline. She needs to be steady. She needs a commissioning mentality. So habits at this stage of life are less about control and more about you moving through your day, not having to constantly negotiate with yourself back and forth. And these habits will help you create a sense of being held, not you having to hold everything together. So if midlife is feeling uncomfortable for you right now, I want you to, first of all, give yourself some grace. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, but it does mean that you're being asked to do something different. You're being asked to step into leadership. Midlife is not a crisis, it's a commissioning. Leadership always starts on the inside before anything happens on the outside.